Okay, folks, thanks to everyone who's joined. But before I start, I would like to thank Bert, Nick, and John for inviting me onto the panel. I started working with the team over 5 months ago, working on the subject and listening to thought leaders like Charles and Neil and Nick as well, has transformed my understanding of the key issues. So this presentation is the culmination of the work done so far, as well as my own experience. But before we go there, I'd like to share with you some key metrics, I guess, measurement of human suffering as such. In 2017, 785 million people were without even basic drinking water. Millions were living in hunger and they continue to do so. We are not on track to end poverty by 2030. 2 billion people lack basic sanitation services. And unless we tackle inequality, 52 million people, 52 million children under the age of 5 will die between 2019 and 2030 due to various issues. 79.5 million, or 1% of the world's population, were displaced people in 2019. And failure to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade will be disastrous for yields of maize, rice, and wheat. So unless we act now, human suffering is likely to accelerate. Now, those are big numbers, I guess, and sometimes it's difficult to relate to. But I would like to share with you, I guess, my own personal experience, and hopefully that makes it a bit real. So those of you who know me will know that I was born and brought up in Kenya, Nairobi. I grew up there up to my teens. And this is really a story of a girl called Grace. She lives in Mutare Valley in Nairobi. It's where I grew up. She's 14 years old. And at the bottom is what the Mutare Valley looked like back in the 40s and 50s. But this is what it looks like now. It's one of the biggest slums in Nairobi, in Kenya. Of course, at the time when I was living there, it wasn't as bad, right? And since the 50s, Nairobi's population has grown from 0.14 million to 4.7 million. 70% of the population live on 5% of the land. And most migrate from rural communities that are impacted by poverty, where farming has failed due to global warming, right? And Grace came to Nairobi, like many do, because the small farm, that family farm, failed due to droughts in northern Kenya. She was a burden on her parents. She ran away from home, like millions of kids do, right? And these are just some of her friends in similar circumstances. They're addicted to sniffing glue, drugs, and beg for a living. Now, the community she lives in, as I said, is Mutare Valley, and it suffers from really poor sanitation and water. This is an example of a communal lavatory that's shared by hundreds, right? It backs onto Nairobi River, which is the source of water supply for bathing. It's full of human waste. And before I just move on, most will know that, or you'll know that, women suffer the most due to poor sanitation. Apart from anything else, these places are really unsafe for women. And then, needless to say, water is unsafe to drink. They have to buy water from freshwater ATMs as such, right? The skeptics amongst us will say this is just one data point. It's Africa. It's to be expected. This is how it's always been. But research shows that this scene is repeated in many countries across sub-Saharan Africa as well as Asia, right? And the key risk is that these types of local issues pose a risk of flaring into something much bigger. At best, it's mass migration that we've seen to Europe. At us, something such as this can spiral out of control, such as the Syrian conflict did, right? Now, who remembers the genesis of the Syrian conflict? Well, the droughts in Syria from 2006 and between 2006 2011 decimated the farming and rural industry. 75% of the farms failed. 86% of the livestock died. 1.5 million farmers were forced to move into urban slums in Damascus and Homs, along with the Iraqi refugees. So shortages of water and food led to social upheaval, conflict, uprising against Bashar al-Assad's regime, and thereafter sectarian unrest ensued between Alawite ruling class and Sunni majority. So the key point is scarcity of resources is a threat multiplier. And this quote at the bottom from Kofi Annan is quite prophetic. He says, as we look ahead, we can see real risks with resource depletion, especially freshwater scarcities, severe forms of environmental degradation, may increase social and political tension in unpredictable but potentially dangerous ways. So these local, I guess, issues can spiral out of control pretty rapidly. Now, all is not lost. As I said, I think we have the technology and the capability to make a real difference. And over the course of last few weeks, we've done a number of webinars, right? And they've been really insightful. We learned that in the military aerospace, we learned that technology will change the way, will change the face of modern warfare. It has the potential to significantly reduce loss of life as seen during World War I, World War II. In the civil aerospace webinar, we learned that innovation will make global travel greener and reduce CO2 emissions. In the space webinar, we already explored the outer reaches of the universe. Visiting planets. We can land spacecrafts on asteroids, which I guess to a layperson like me is just mind-boggling that we can do that. And then in the fourth industrial revolution, technologies such as AI and robotics promise to deliver a step change in productivity and improve quality of life. But I guess the history of innovation from A&D has already benefited mankind in many ways, right? From innovations such as drones, penicillin, jet engines, internet, computers, which has really enabled the webinar today. These innovations came out of the A&D sector, and they've changed our lives for the better. But I guess the key point that comes again in my mind is, we've got all these capabilities. It's high time we applied them and these technologies to address the global challenges we have and end human suffering. Thank you.